Traveling back to classic Hollywood can feel like opening a time capsule, and Suzanne Pleshette is one of those names that deserves a long pause and a second look. She wasn't just another familiar face from reruns or old studio photos. She represented a very specific kind of confidence that defined an era. At a time when actresses were often boxed into narrow stereotypes, Suzanne managed to feel modern, grounded, and entirely herself. Her appeal wasn't loud or manufactured. It came from presence, timing, and an unmistakable sense of self. Looking back now, her work feels less like nostalgia and more like rediscovery. She reminds us that talent and personality age far better than trends. This isn't about myth-making or exaggeration, but about acknowledging how naturally compelling she was. Suzanne's legacy sits comfortably between elegance and authenticity, and that balance is exactly why people still talk about her decades later. She didn't chase attention, attention followed her, beyond the familiar role. Many people instantly associate Suzanne Pleshette with her role as Emily Hartley, a character that became iconic for her warmth, intelligence, and emotional honesty. While that role cemented her place in television history, it also sometimes overshadowed the broader scope of her career. Suzanne had already built a strong foundation in film and theater long before she stepped into that living room set. She brought nuance to every performance, making even everyday dialogue feel layered and real. What made her stand out was how effortless she seemed, as though she wasn't performing but simply existing truthfully in each scene. That sense of ease translated across genres, from drama to comedy. She proved that likability didn't have to mean simplicity. Emily Hartley was memorable not because she was flashy, but because she felt lived in and sincere, a reflection of Suzanne's own grounded approach to her craft. Classic Hollywood, real confidence. Old Hollywood often relied on polish and illusion, but Suzanne Pleshette brought something more human to the screen and the camera lens. Her photographs from the 1960s and 1970s don't feel stiff or overproduced. Instead, they carry a relaxed confidence that still resonates today. She understood how to work with the camera without losing herself to it. There was a calm assurance in her posture and expression that suggested she was comfortable being seen exactly as she was. That kind of self-possession wasn't common, especially in an industry driven by rigid expectations. Suzanne didn't present herself as untouchable or overly stylized. She looked present, engaged, and aware. These images endure not because they were provocative, but because they were honest. They captured a woman who trusted her own presence, and that trust is what gives those photos their lasting impact. Style that spoke softly. Suzanne's sense of style reflected her personality, understated, confident, and never forced. Whether dressed for a film role or a public appearance, she favored clean lines and classic silhouettes that emphasized comfort as much as beauty. Her fashion choices didn't shout for attention. They invited appreciation. This approach made her stand out in a time when glamour often meant excess. She understood that elegance didn't require exaggeration. Her look was always intentional, but never rigid, allowing her natural charisma to lead. That balance is part of why her images still feel fresh. There's no sense of chasing trends, only a quiet commitment to what felt right for her. In many ways, her style was an extension of her acting philosophy: clarity over spectacle, substance over flash. Suzanne showed that restraint can be just as powerful as boldness when it's rooted in confidence. A voice you remember. One of Suzanne Pleshette's most distinctive traits was her voice, rich with warmth and character. It carried a slightly husky tone that added depth to every line she delivered, whether comedic or serious. Her voice made conversations feel intimate, as if she were speaking directly to you rather than performing for an audience. This quality gave her roles an added layer of realism and charm. It wasn't just about sound, but about intention. She used pacing and inflection with remarkable skill, turning simple dialogue into something memorable. That vocal presence also reinforced her on-screen confidence. She didn't rush or soften her delivery to fit expectations. Instead, she owned it. In an industry that often pressured women to sound a certain way, Suzanne's voice stood as a quiet act of individuality, one that audiences instinctively trusted and remembered long after the scene ended. A sex character. Redefined, Suzanne Pleshette once described herself not as a symbol, but as a character, a distinction that speaks volumes about how she viewed herself and her work. This mindset shaped how she approached both her roles and her public image. She didn't rely on shock or spectacle to make an impression. Instead, she leaned into personality, intelligence, and emotional honesty. That approach gave her an appeal that felt grounded rather than performative. She understood that attraction isn't just visual, it's rooted in confidence, humor, and self-awareness. By defining herself on her own terms, Suzanne avoided being reduced to a single dimension. She allowed herself to be complex, relatable, and real. That philosophy is part of what made her presence feel so enduring. She wasn't presenting an image to be consumed, she was offering a person to be understood. The power of stillness. In many of Suzanne Plechette's most memorable moments, what stands out isn't movement, but stillness. She had a remarkable ability to hold a scene simply by being present. A glance, a pause, or a quiet reaction often said more than pages of dialogue. This restraint required confidence and trust in both herself and her audience. She didn't overplay emotions or rush to fill silence. Instead, she allowed moments to breathe. That quality translated beautifully to photography as well. Her still images feel alive because they capture thought and intention, not just appearance. There's a sense that something is happening beneath the surface. This subtlety is rare and difficult to replicate. It's also why her work continues to feel relevant. Suzanne understood that sometimes the most powerful statement is the one delivered without excess or explanation. A legacy that feels current. What makes Suzanne Plechette's legacy so compelling is how well it holds up in a modern context. In an age of constant self-promotion and carefully curated personas, her authenticity feels refreshing. She didn't build her career around spectacle, but around consistency and integrity. That choice gave her work a timeless quality. New audiences discovering her today often respond to how real she feels, even decades later. Her performances don't rely on dated references or trends. They're rooted in human experience, which never goes out of style. Suzanne's career serves as a reminder that longevity isn't about constant reinvention, but about staying true to who you are. She carved out a space that belonged entirely to her, and that space remains inviting, familiar, and relevant long after the spotlight moved on. Why she still matters. Revisiting Suzanne Pleshette isn't just an exercise in nostalgia. It's an opportunity to appreciate a standard of presence that feels increasingly rare. She represented a kind of confidence built on self-knowledge rather than approval. Her work encourages us to slow down, pay attention, and value substance over surface. That's why her photos, performances, and interviews continue to resonate. They remind us that elegance doesn't need embellishment, and charisma doesn't require excess. Suzanne mattered because she was fully herself, on screen and off. In celebrating her, we're not just honoring a career, but a way of being that prioritizes authenticity and quiet strength. Her legacy invites us to rethink what it means to leave an impression, proving that sometimes the most lasting impact comes from simply showing up as you are.